Everyone, and welcome. My name is Nicholas Buland. I am a program administrator at the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. You're listening to a pre-recorded information session on the 2023 grant round of the Massachusetts Dredging Program. Thank you for tuning in and for your interest in the program. The purpose of this video is to provide a walkthrough of the 2023 round RFP. I'll go over the agenda in just a moment, but I wanted to start with a few housekeeping items. First, copies of this slide deck are available online. Please feel welcome to download a copy either before listening to the presentation to help follow along or to save it for later. Second, because this is not a live recording, you won't find any Q&A on this video. However, the RFP has an open Q&A period during which any person can submit written questions. Responses will be publicly posted following the end of the Q&A period. I'll provide more details on that process at the end of the presentation. So here's our agenda for today's video. We'll start with an overview of the Mass Dredging Program, its backgrounds, goals, its general ABCs. Next, we'll talk about core program requirements, followed by a walkthrough of the application process. We'll talk about the review process and the criteria that's used to evaluate applications. Finally, we'll wrap up with a talk about other EOHD resources that are available specifically to coastal communities, and I'll detail the written Q&A process. So the Mass Dredging Program is a capital grant program that provides focused fundings to coastal municipalities for saltwater dredging. It was originally piloted under EOHD's MassWorks infrastructure program, but it was quickly authorized as a standalone program through the 2018 Economic Development Bond Bill. And it has remained a standalone program to this day in its own right. The Mass Dredging Program is the Commonwealth's first and only program to offer focused funding for dredging on a predictable, competitive basis. Its overarching goal is to respond to local dredging needs that strengthen the blue economy. So the blue economy is still partly a term of art in public policy, but for our program, we take a very broad view of the concept. We define the blue economy as encompassing not just ocean-based commercial activities such as fisheries and transportation, but quality of life activities such as coastal recreation and public destinations, as well as what communities need to make all those things possible. So namely harbors that are safe to navigate and harbors that have a healthy ecosystems to support long-term sustainability. So the basics, again, this is a capital grant program administered by EOHD. It offers one-year construction grants for public saltwater dredging projects. The program supports all types of dredging and material disposal methods, so hydraulic, mechanical, maintenance, improvement, berth, channel, beach nourishment, open water disposal, all things like that. Overall, the program focuses on shovel-ready projects that support one or more subsectors of the blue economy. We identify 4 subsectors: economic vitality, vibrant waterfronts, maritime safety, and ecosystem health. So past applicants will probably notice a change in terminology, but the spirit and the content of each of these subsectors has not changed. Here's a snapshot of the program's impact to date. Since 2019, when the program first became standalone, over $19 million has been awarded for 28 public projects. Over $25 million has been leveraged in matching funds. Over 639,000 cubic yards were removed from public channels and berths. And to give you a sense of scale, 639,000 cubic yards is roughly equivalent to the volume of 193 Olympic swimming pools. More than a third of all the dredge material removed was used to rebuild public beaches in Massachusetts. Projects have supported berth or navigation for over 900 commercial vessels, use of over 8,000 moorings and dockage slips, and the livelihoods of over 60 harbor-dependent businesses. So what's new in 2023? There have been changes this year, but they're more procedural and form-related and not substantive or policy-related. So first, permit copies are not required if copies were submitted in a previous grant round and no modifications have been made since their submission. Stronger guidance is provided to assist applicants in preparing their submissions this year. So within the application, more guidance is given about how to provide complete answers, and so how to maximize your answers' competitiveness. And within the RFP, there's an expanded list of state data and informational resources that applicants can consult when preparing their submissions. So if you're looking for details about fishery statistics, harbor maps, coast guides, ecosystem services, the RFP has a list of resources available to you that you can consult. Additionally, as I already mentioned, past applicants may notice some revised or updated terminology, so just be aware of that. We also tried to consolidate narrative questions, especially in Section 6 on supporting the blue economy. Here are the basics, who, what, and how much of the program. Who's eligible? The program is open to all Massachusetts coastal municipalities. There is a limit of 1 application per municipality. Joint applications are accepted, but if you submit a joint application, you cannot submit a single application at the same time. What's eligible? The program supports bidding and construction expenses for public dredging and dredge material disposal. This is key. Only public tidelands are eligible. So this means that the dredge areas cannot be privately owned, whether that ownership is by grant, lease, or license. In these cases, those areas are considered non-public tidelands and so are ineligible for public funding. Pre-construction costs, such as study or design, are also not eligible. Municipalities can, however, consult with the Seaport Economic Council grant program for pre-construction grant opportunities, which I will talk about later in the presentation and which is an awesome resource. How much? The maximum amount that may be requested is $2.5 million per municipality. Partial awards may be considered. These entail an award amount that is less than what an applicant requested. EOHD reserves the right to make such awards, and we have definitely done so in the past rounds. Non-state match. All projects require a minimum of 50% non-state match to be considered. This means that any matching funds must come from a non-state funding source. You can use multiple funding sources to meet this requirement. Funding sources could include municipal funds or bonds, federal grants, funds directly distributed through the American Rescue Plan Act, so ARPA funds. Also, private cash contributions can be counted. Please note that neither pre-construction expenses nor in-kind contributions are eligible for match purposes. However, if the applicant incurred $50,000 or more in pre-construction expenses in the last 3 years, you do have the option in the application to describe these expenses, which the review panel will consider in their overall assessment. In other words, while your pre-construction costs can't be used as a match, they can contribute to your overall competitiveness. Contracting. Successful applicants will be required to submit copies of all permits and drawings, as well as match documentation. The anticipated start date for grant contracts is July 1st. This is the earliest that fiscal year 24 capital funds will be available to EOHD. All grant funds must be expended by June 30th, 2024. So again, 1-year construction grants, which means grantees basically have 1 season to complete their projects. We know that for larger projects and even projects with very short seasons, this is not ideal, but regardlessly, this is the nature of state capital dollars. They do expire after the fiscal year for which they are awarded. In the event of an award, these are the general obligations that municipalities are required to meet. First, payments will be dispersed for actual work completed as documented by invoices. In other words, funds are dispersed on a cost reimbursement basis. Grant deliverables include quarterly progress reports, bid plans and bid registers, construction contracts and change orders, post-dredge surveys, and then a project closeout form. 5% of an award may be held as retainage until a project closeout is complete and all deliverables are provided. The deadline, applications must be submitted no later than May 5th. Additionally, applications must be submitted using EOHD's online grant platform, which is submittable. No late applications will be accepted. No paper or email submissions will be accepted. For preparation assistance, you can find a Microsoft Word copy of the application on Combis. However, this copy is provided as a reference only to help you prepare. No submission of this copy or document will be accepted as a formal application. It has to be done through Submittable, completing the online form. As in previous years, the application is divided into 7 sections. First, we have project summary. This is just a quick snapshot of your application. 2, harbor profile. Questions here cover the existing harbor development, users, and nearby environmental justice populations. Project details. This covers the project site, need, scope, and shell readiness. Cost and funding sources. Here, you'll detail the project costs, your match, and the funding sources of that match. 5, supporting the blue economy. So this section covers economic activities, public uses, and anticipated benefits in relation to the blue economy. This is your largest section for sure. It actually consists of 4 subsections. Each is associated with those 4 subsectors that we previously mentioned in the application. I'm sorry, in the presentation. So these are commercial fishing and boating, recreational boating and destinations, maritime safety, ecosystem services, and health. And the last section, or the last narrative section, preparing for success. This section covers plans and capabilities to maintain a project's outcome, as well as any imminent public infrastructure or commercial property improvements that are going to coincide with the project. The final section is a certification of authorization. This is a sign-off by the submitter acknowledging that they have the authority to submit the application. There is no signature required, just a sign-off or a check at the end. Attachments. There are 3 types of attachments. Those that are required for everyone, those that are conditionally required based on the circumstances, and then optional attachments, which are reviewed but are not evaluated. Required attachments. All applicants must submit a site plan. So this should be a scaled map, preferably satellite, that clearly delineates all work areas, including disposal sites. Permit and permit modifications. So applicants must attach copies of all permits issued to date, including their associated plans. However, if an applicant submitted their permits in a previous grant round, then in these cases, only copies of permit modifications are required. And if no modifications have been done, then you'll have the opportunity to say that in the application, and then you will not be required to reattach the permits. Conditional attachments. Joint applicants are required to provide a statement of collaboration from the joint applicant. Section 204 beneficial use projects require a feasibility report or federal interest determination report from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. If you cite any imminent commercial property improvements or private dredging that will coincide with the project, you'll also need to submit a statement of commitment from the private property owner. Lastly, optional attachments. If desired, you are allowed to submit a reasonable number of graphic documents, so maps, figures, photos. However, apart from graphics, no other attachments should be submitted unless specifically requested or you are prompted to within the application itself. Our application platform. So in 2022, our program piloted a new online grant management platform to receive applications. It was very successful. We are continuing with that platform this year. Its name is Submittable. The first thing to know is that each submitter or the person entering the application, presumably a municipal employee, is required to sign up for a personal user account. If you don't have a user account already, you will be prompted to create one during the application process. So there's no special instructions, just as you go through, you will be prompted. This slide provides some screenshots of that process. So in the top left-hand corner, this is on our program's How to Apply page. You're going to see a little section that says How to Apply Online. You'll click the little plus. Then you'll be brought to our submittable homepage, and you're going to find a funding opportunity listed as Mass Dredging Program. You're going to want to click on those guidelines, take a gander, and then click the Submit button. From there, you'll be directed to the sign in or the sign up. So if you're a new user, you just sign up. If you're an existing user, you sign in. And if you are an existing user and forgot your password, there is an option to reset it. And once you have signed in, you should be automatically taken to an application, and you've officially started it. It's something that you're able to go back every time that you sign in again to revisit, and you do have the option to save the application at any time and return later. So here are the broad steps for preparing and submitting your application. First, you're going to begin at Combis, where we have the RFP and all the documents. That's our repository for where we put things for interested applicants. You're going to download and review the RFP and the reference copy of the application. I recommend doing that so you can kind of see what you're in for, and the RFP literally goes through everything. I'm walking through it right now, but this is no substitute for actually reading the RFP. On our program's How to Apply page, as we saw in the previous slide, that's where you're going to find Submittable, and that's where you're going to start your application. And as I said, you don't have to do it all in one sitting. You have the option to save and go back. You'll see at the bottom of the screen this Save Draft button. Before submitting your form, what you're going to want to do, or what we recommend doing, is gathering and saving all your attachments in a common folder on your computer. And you do have to label your attachments. And in the RFP, we have a file naming system that you are going to want to use, because you may be attaching a lot and we need to organize them and be able to quickly identify them. So we ask that you use the naming system that we describe in the RFP to add some logic to it. Upload the attachments and finalize your applications. The application won't let you submit if there are any errors. So once those are resolved, you are able to submit, and you're just going to click submit. A confirmation email will be sent to the address saved in your user account. So if you're the municipal employee, you logged in, whatever your email address you use to log in, that is where your confirmations are going to. So just be aware of that. You may want to check if you signed up with an old email address last year to make sure that everything is up to date. So a few notes about the mechanics of the application form. First, you'll find several drop-down answers like this one on the left-hand side. One of these drop-downs is question 2.1, which asks you to select the name of the harbor that you'll be dredging. In previous rounds, applicants have replied to this question in very different ways when it was open-ended. In some cases, applicants described basically the small portion that they were dredging, which led them to cite fewer users and fewer assets when they actually had the ability to describe the entire harbor. In other cases, applicants described two harbors as if they were one, and then there were overestimated numbers. So to help resolve this, the question is now a drop-down, and the drop-down includes a complete list of harbors taken from the Commonwealth's 2015 State of Our Harbors report. Harbors are listed first by municipality, then by harbor name. In addition, you'll see screenshots on this slide of other form fields. So in the top right-hand corner, this is kind of your basic open-ended narrative. Almost all of these have, most text boxes allow rich editing, so you can bold, italicize, underline. You can use bullet points as well, so don't be afraid to use those. Those text boxes will usually expand automatically as well, so it's not like you're going to run out of space. You will see some tables, and in the tables where there's a kind of total column or a total row, it will auto-calculate for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And the important thing to know is because this is an online application and not a paper one, some questions are conditional. You're not going to see them unless you answer the previous question in a certain way. So it's to be very important that you read the text, all the text carefully, because if not, you may not have a question appear that it would have been beneficial for you to answer. So I always like to provide some helpful tips when going through these. Some of us are writing our first grant applications, and then others are coming back around for a second bite at the apple, that type of thing. So a few things to remember: complete all sections to the extent possible. We can't evaluate what's not answered. So if you don't put anything, we can't give you any points. Respond completely to each question. Some people don't want to repeat information, but it is okay to repeat information across sections if doing so will answer a question completely. So don't be afraid to do that. Carefully read all text for guidance. As I said, one of the things we tried to do this year was give more guidance when you're going through, so you know what to include to maximize your competitiveness. And then it's good to remember that not all statements speak for themselves. So whenever you can, whenever asked or whenever feasible, support statements with examples, numbers, and data. Kind of like in grade school when you told always support your arguments. Same is very effective in your grant application. Showing us some numbers to go with it is extremely helpful in terms of competitiveness. Some applicants find it useful to type all of this in a Word document and then post to the online thing later. That is done. That's also why we provide you with a reference copy of the application in MS Word form. Again, you can't submit that, but it's a great way to prepare it if you would like. So award decisions, applications will be assessed according to the evaluation criteria and additional considerations specified in the RFP. Award recommendations are subject to secretary approval and to ratification by the governor and the lieutenant governor. EOHD anticipates providing decision letters in mid-June. All applicants will receive a written decision letter. So whether it's an award or a non-award decision, you will receive something in writing. You're not going to be left hanging. So evaluation criteria. I'm going to do a rundown now of the criteria that the review panel will apply to evaluate applications on a competitive basis. And this is all in the RFP as well. So again, I'm following it down for you, but this is why it's also important to read the RFP. So reviewers will assess and weigh the following. Harbor profile, we're going to consider facilities and infrastructure in the harbor consistent with the idea of a developed harbor. So boat ramps, moorings and slips, fuel docks, marinas, boat yards. Are these things there? How many of them? Land uses consistent with a destination waterfront. So examples: public beaches, harbor parks or trails, cultural buildings, downtown centers, restaurants, retail. Do these exist? How many of them exist? And also proximity and access to the harbor for environmental justice populations. So basically what we're looking for here, or what we want to see ideally, is that the project harbor is a public resource and that it's actively engaged in the blue economy and benefiting multiple populations. That is the ideal, of course, and not all harbors are going to live up to that. We completely understand that, but we ask all the questions. Project details. So project need based on shoaling and impacts to users, the feasibility of the project scope, can it be completed within a year, and the shovel readiness. Are permits secured? If they're not secured, are they imminent? Definitely before the construction season or the bidding season, all those types of things. Cost and funding sources. So the percentage match that is being committed, 50% is the minimum. So going over will be considered. Status of match funds, are they secured? Are they going to be imminently secured? Obviously, the more secured they are, the better. And pre-construction spending, as I said, you can't use it for match purposes, but if you did incur $50,000 or more over the last 3 fiscal years, you can describe that to us and it can be taken into consideration. All right, supporting the blue economy. As I said, this was your largest section, and it goes into the 4 subsectors. So support for the blue economy is evaluated using those 4 subsectors, which are listed here. While projects that are strong in multiple subsectors will generally be more competitive, projects are not required to excel in all or any number of subsectors to be considered. So we've often had people express concern that, they can't meet all these requirements. Well, they're not requirements. Again, they are just things that we look at, and these are kind of areas of interest. We've funded projects that are strong in all of these areas, but they didn't have to be strong in all of them or multiple ones. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. You don't have to be strong in all of them in order to get a grant to can be considered for a grant. We have had projects that lined up with all of these at one point as their primary focus. So there's a great variety of funding. So commercial fishing and boating, we look at existing commercial fishing, lobstering, aquaculture, or shellfishing, existing commercial boating as well, and then new or sustained benefits for the above commercial activities as a result of the dredging. Recreational boating and destinations. So support of a region-wide boating public, and a region-wide boating public is measured based on public access to boat ramps, public parking, and transient boater accommodations in the harbor. And then we ask about new or sustained benefits for recreational boating or for an active and vibrant waterfront, and that is based on the destinations in the harbor. So recreational, community, and commercial, we want to know about all of them and tell us. Maritime safety, so actual or imminent risk to boating safety due to shoaling, and new or sustained benefits for emergency responder speed or capabilities. And then ecosystem services and health. One of the things we looked at is planned beneficial use of dredged material. Is it going to be reused to build a beach or something like that? Protection or restoration of natural coastal resources, such as barrier beaches or islands, nesting habitat, eelgrass, shellfish beds, salt marshes, etc., and then new or sustained ecosystem services benefits. This is kind of a term that not everyone is familiar with, but in the context of the blue economy, ecosystem services mean benefits that are provided to a community from the protection or restoration of your community's natural coastal ecosystems, which are those that I just listed. So when we protect or restore these ecosystems, they actually provide services to your community. These services include what are listed here: erosion or flood mitigation, habitat health, water cleansing for better water quality, sediment stabilization, invasive species control, a lot of those things. So if your project is going to provide any of those benefits, those are what you can talk about. And also finally, alignment with a community's municipal vulnerability preparedness planning report. I believe all coastal communities now have this report in terms of they are now qualified municipal vulnerability preparedness communities. There is a link that will essentially show you every community's report, including your own, if you don't know where to find it. Preparing for success. So in this section, what we're doing is we're going to look at planning and capabilities to maintain project outcomes based on existing permits that you have, local or state approved plans, and revenue sources. And we're also going to look at plans for imminent public and or private capital investments in the harbor. To kind of talk a little bit more about these, essentially what we like to see in this section is that a municipality has been proactive in planning. that they thought carefully about the future of the harbor and that the applicant is prepared to maximize the benefits of the project. So that's kind of the first bullet point. After that, what we really like to see as well are projects that catalyze or coincide with plans for imminent public or private capital investments. So these could include these last 3 bullet points. For example, improvements to public facilities or infrastructure, such as rehabilitation of a public dock or pier or boat ramp. Are those things going to coincide with the dredging? Piggyback dredging, which is imminent plans for a commercial property owner to complete their own dredging project, either alongside yours or shortly after. Or improvements to just a commercial waterfront property in a more general sense, such as replacement of a marina's dock. So if any of these are going to happen, you have the opportunity to tell us about it, and they do need to be backed up by a letter from the private property owner. Lastly, here are some conditional considerations that EOHD may incorporate into final recommendations. These are called out in the RFP as well. So the urgency of an individual project, total amount of funding available for awards, and the broad and equitable distribution of limited funds that we have. Factors that play into these considerations, they're not the only factors, but to be aware of, the time since the project area was last dredged, the impending expiration dates of existing permits. For example, is this the last chance to complete a project before a permit expires and you have to redo it all over again? Project lifespan, how long are the benefits of the project going to last before more dredging is required? The need to phase a project due to its size, and the amount of time since the applicant last received a dredging award, if applicable. So data, information, and ideas. As noted earlier in the presentation, one thing we've tried to do this round is provide applicants with stronger guidance, including an expanded list of state data, information, and idea resources. In the past, applicants have asked where they might be able to find data to include in their application. This was a great question. We loved hearing it, and our sister secretariats have published some fantastic reports related to the blue economy. So the RFP provides links to as many of these resources as I could find. They include information on fisheries and aquacultural statistics, harbor maps, coast guides, ecosystem services, a lot more. I list several of these resources here on the slide. The port by port profile report is actually a very new one that was released by the Division of Marine Fisheries, and that report has information such as fishery statistics, so definitely a good one to take a look at. Please note that consultation of these resources is not a requirement of any application or an evaluation criteria. We compiled this list as a courtesy in response to requests that we had heard. The resources are meant to assist applicants either with generating ideas, informing narratives, or generally assisting in the preparation of your application. I think they're great resources, but you're not required to use them. We did it to respond to those that were looking. Lastly, I strongly encourage coastal communities to consult with the Seaport Economic Council for potential grant opportunities outside of the mass dredging program. So SEC grants are available only to coastal municipalities, and they support a large variety of local projects, including dredging study, design, and permitting. So while our program does not cover pre-construction phases, the Seaport Economic Council grant program can assist with that. They have been accepting grant applications for these purposes for quite a while, the last couple of years, I believe, and we work closely as programs to make sure that our application and their application mirror each other very well. So that way, you know, you're not duplicating the wheel year to year as your projects progress. Another great thing to look at is municipal harbor plans or designated port area master plans. These are a type of plan that you get approved through. You develop it and then you get approved through CZM, Office of Coastal Zone Management, or EEA. It's great to have these plans available because a lot of the questions that we ask on the dredging application, the plans will actually already have for you. So it's a great resource if you haven't invested in them. You can consult the Seaport Economic Council about possible funding opportunities. And then designing construction of public infrastructure on the coast. So boat ramps, docks, piers, or wharfs, harbor trails. If there's other things besides dredging that you're thinking of, Seaport Economic Council, very versatile funding source. And another good thing is it's only a 20% match required for Seaport Economic Council awards. So our dredging construction does require the 50% by statute, but the Seaport Economic Council, including design grants for dredging, only require the 20% match. So strongly encourage you to take a look at that if you're at a different phase in your project. The next SEC grant deadline is May 1st, 2023. So you have a little longer to get it if you're just seeing this now. And there's an email for the director of the Seaport Economic Council there, Ellen Sabula, if you wanted to reach out to her for questions. So as I said, this is not a live event. This is a pre-recording, so we're not doing Q&A, but there is an open Q&A through the RFP where things can be done in writing. So general questions regarding the RFP will be accepted via electronic mail through April 18th. Send questions to eohedgrants@mass.gov, and you want to use the subject line dredging RFP. This information is in the RFP as well, so these instructions you don't have to write down, they are in the RFP. EOHD will respond only to general questions and reserves the right not to respond to any or all questions, so be aware of that. Similar questions may be aggregated and answered via a single response. Answers will be posted to ComBuy so everyone can see them. And technical support will be available to assist you with submittable up to 5 p.m. on the application due date. So again, you have technically to 11:59 p.m. Because it is an online system, but in terms of who's going to be sitting at a chair and able to help you with any technical issues, that's only until 5 p.m. So be aware of that. And this brings us to the end of the presentation. So thank you again for tuning in and taking the opportunity to learn more about the Mass Dredging Program. We look forward to reviewing all applications. Take care and good luck.